Welcome back to Old School Sports and our OOTP 22 playthrough of the New York Yankees. We are at the start of the 2036 offseason. We have just won the World Series, second World Series title in the past 3 seasons for the Yankees, and the third in 15 years since we pushed out Brian Cashman and took over. So with 3 World Championships in 15 years, as opposed to the 1 World Championship that Cashman won in his last 21 years as Yankees GM, we feel that we've done a decent job accomplishing what we intended when we started this series. With OOTP 23 out worldwide today, we're going to be putting this series into hiatus after this episode. Doesn't mean that we won't come back to it, but there are no guarantees. However, because we have had a lot of fun playing through this series and with the interaction with some of you in the comments, we're going to still kind of begin the off season and figure out what we need to do with this team and try to position it as well as possible in this episode. So if and when we do come back to it, we'll be ready to jump back in with this Yankees team and try to win a few more World Series championships. Looking at our front office, scouting director is a huge hole that we have right now. Our longtime scouting director just retired, so going to need to find a scout who hopefully can do a good job for us scouting around the world and also fit in well with the rest of our team. And we've got a lot of potentially interesting options here. We tend to focus as much as possible on international scouting and amateur scouting, and obviously, like someone who highly favors tools. So Jonah Smith, who is legendary in the minors, excellent in the majors, and outstanding with both international and amateurs, and a highly favored tools scout. Definitely looks like an interesting prospect. If we look at the default ratings, we can get a sense of his personality. And he is personable, works well with personable people, and struggles with controlling. So going back to our team, we have some ecstatic staff cohesion. We have other personable people on the team. We have a lot of people who work well with personable just like him. And we don't have anybody controlling. So if anything, he's going to be additive to the great staff cohesion that we've put together. And it also looks like he is an excellent scout. So we are going to make the offer to Mr. Smith to hopefully join us as our next scouting director. If I can find him here. There we go. Jonah Smith. Highly favored tools. Excellent scout. Offer him a contract, looking for $870,000 for 5 years. Let's see if we can get him for $750,000 a year for 5 years. I'm sure he will come back and agree with that. The issue right now as we begin the early stages of the offseason is that we don't have a scout on board. So as we're trying to figure out what to do with our team going forward, we're completely reliant on the OSS scouting as well as our memories. Got a couple of big holes as we think about the upcoming offseason. Bo Bichette, who has been a great player for us for a decade now, signed him away from the Blue Jays and has had a fantastic career for us. Profiles as a slightly above average hitter and a great defensive shortstop at this point, although he had an exceptional offensive season in 2036 for us with 35 homers, 104 runs batted in. Really, it was his best offensive season may have been his best offensive season. At least it was his best offensive season in terms of home runs and runs batted in during the decade that he's been playing with the Yankees. So a Awesome season for him. 295 average, 7.8 WAR is the second most, or the third most that he's put up with us. He had a 8.3, an 8.2, and a 7.9 in his early seasons when he was hitting for somewhat higher batting averages, still good power, and then you can see out in the lineup, 140, 150 games a year, as opposed to the 125 he played last season. So he's coming off a great year, but he is wrecked physically, and he's still looking for 30 some odd $million a year for 4 years. He's going to be 39 next season. So as great as he has been with the Yankees and as much money as we have to spend, he's also at this point a disruptive influence in the clubhouse. We're going to be most likely moving on from Mr. Bichette, unless when he gets to free agency he's looking for a lot less money. In the other hole we'll have to fill in our offense is Drew Romo, our veteran catcher, who probably is going to win another Gold Glove shortly. You can see he's an 80 catcher ability, 70 catcher arm. Has been fantastic for us defensively, but batted just 167 with a 39 OPS plus this past season. So we did make a trade last year to bring on Doug Kokaruda, who served as our backup this past year. Also a very good defensive catcher who hits more than Romo does. So worst case scenario is Kokaruda could take over as our starter. We're definitely interested in talking with Romo about a potential return. And his contract requirements are a little more reasonable, $6.8 million a year. He's so good defensively that that's something we're going to think about. Don't know that, his bat is just not good at this point, and don't really know that I want to be paying $6.5 million a year for someone who might be a backup catcher, but he's so good defensively, it's definitely something to think about. And then the other gap that we're going to have in our roster is we're going to need to be looking for several starting pitchers. Tyler Fullman opted out of his contract. Angel Lara, who had filled in for us as a starter now and then, is going to be gone, as is Josh Cambria with a similar situation. And then Jack Leiter, you may remember, suffered a ruptured UCL, is out for 7 to 8 months. So he's going to be out at the beginning of next season, our number 3 starter behind Bobby Chapa and Tyson Neighbors. And then last but not least, Reuben Mariona, who we had big plans for a couple years ago, recovering from a torn meniscus, only 24 years old, but he is fragile physically, may come back wrecked after this torn meniscus, and at this point really profiles only as maybe an average major league starter. You can see it's kind of for a 24-year-old. Looking at the scouting, he was, and this is the OSA reports now since we don't have a scout, but, he had 4.5 star potential with, 55 stuff, 55 movement at one point, 50 control, and just has kind of, the injuries have taken a toll on him over the years, and he doesn't profile as good as we had hoped. So we're going to have to be making some moves to bolster the starting rotation, in addition to figuring out what we want to do at catcher and shortstop this coming off season. So it's going to be busy. Looking at the potential salary arbitration players, I think we're going to probably want to bring back just about everybody. Harder and Kaku, both excellent relievers for us. Luis Ortiz is a lefty who is now out of minor league options, kind of a replacement level arm, although he did have a good career with us for the Yankees, but probably we'll try to trade him away or not make an offer to him. Kevin Blunt is still one of our utility infielders. Happy to bring him back. Victor Mejias, our starting third baseman, starting to get a little pricey, but a solid offensive player and a good defensive player. Definitely will bring him back. And then Eric Cares is a fourth outfielder for us, who is also an excellent defensive center fielder, which gives us some flexibility, given that Kevin Daniels, our starting center fielder, is not as good defensively. So definitely want to bring Eric Cares back also. We will be submitting a qualifying offer to Bo Bichette. but will not be expecting him to pick that up, given he's looking for about $32 million a year for 4 years. Oh, and then the other pending free agent, another reason we need starters, is that Josh Brown, who we traded for at the trade deadline last year, is also headed to free agency. Wouldn't mind bringing him back. He's looking for about $9 million a year. We'll have to give that a little bit of thought. He's kind of profiles as a fourth or fifth starter, but he is durable and pitched well for us in a few of the playoff games this season. And right now in our starting rotation, we really only have Chapa and Neighbors. So we've got 3 holes to fill. Obviously, the hope is that Leiter's back by the middle of next year. So maybe it's 2.5 holes to fill, but we need at least 2 starters. So maybe try to bring back Brown and then pick up a second starting pitcher in free agency. So that's kind of the high-level plan. Going to dig in and make these arbitration offers, try to bring back 5 of these 6 players, and we'll circle back and let you know what I'm thinking about Josh Brown also. So we've made offers to Harder, Kaku, Blunt, Mejias, and Cares to hopefully take care of our 5 arbitration-eligible players, and going to look to shop or not make an offer to Luis Ortiz. We are going to make an offer to Josh Brown. He's kind of a 4th or 5th starter, but we need some help in the rotation. He's 30 years old. Don't know if I want to go 6 years. Don't know if I want to give him the kind of money he's looking for. But if we can get him $8 million a year for 5 years and turn the final year into a team option for us rather than a player option for him, I would be willing to do that. Let's see what he thinks about that. He's looking for $55.5 million over 6 years. We're offering him $40 million over 5 years. He's willing to think about it. Would be a reasonable contract for kind of just a solid 4th or 5th starter on this Yankees team. So happy to potentially get that out there with him and get another starting pitcher wrapped up for us before we head into the offseason. Looking at potential free agents, starters in particular, there's a few there. You can see that the guys on our team, Tyler Fullman and Josh Brown, both rank in the top 10 of the pitchers that are going to be out there. Josh Hammond kind of highlights the list. Not a great personality, decent profile, although he's a fly ball pitcher without great movement, which isn't optimal. The issue with Josh Hammond is just when you kind of look at his actual performance on the field, 106 ERA plus, 86 FIP minus, definitely a above average starter. But he's supposedly going to be looking for about $27 million a year, so that could be tough. Jeff McKinney, another option. The issue with him is that he really has been a below-average major league pitcher, 87 ERA plus, 103 FIP minus over the course of his career. His stuff, movement, and control are good. The issue is that his third pitch is that knuckle curve, and it is a mediocre pitch at best. Almost 30 years old. The question is how much better he's going to get. But if he's really looking for something in the $6 million area, he's durable. We would consider bringing him on for a few years. And then Willie Nieves, the last kind of the top starters, looking for about $28 million a year. Again, looking at his pitching stats, 113 ERA plus with an 84 FIP minus over the course of his career. A long string of all-star appearances for the Texas Rangers. He's going to be 33 next year, but certainly good stuff, good movement, great control, and he has 5 pitches, including a electric fastball close to 100 miles an hour, as well as a very good forkball and a solid slider. So the only issue with him is that he's fragile, and he's going to be looking for about $28 million a year. So given that we also have a hole at shortstop to fill, question is whether we can afford to go after Nieves or Hammond, or have to be a little more economical and maybe go after Jeff McKinney. Looking at the catcher situation, Drew Romo is kind of way down the list, even though he is looking for $6 million. The issue is that he is the best defensive catcher out there. Rafael Velasquez, when you look in at his fielding, 65 ability, 65 arm, and also, perhaps even a less effective hitter than Romo. He's going to turn 32 next year. Can get him for a couple $1,000,000 less. He is not fragile, unlike Romo, but would probably be inclined to go with the brilliant defensive catcher in Romo with a similar bat for a couple $1,000,000 extra. The issue is whether we want to just lock up Romo now before risking getting into free agency. You can see Adley Rutschman, Diego Cartaya, Carter Jensen, Ike Irish. There's several good catchers out there, although none are going to be as good defensively as Romo. So my thought is we may try to just lock him up right now before risking that we lose him. He's looking for $6.8 million a year for 3 years. Definitely not going to go that high, but we will go $5.5 million, $6 million, and then give him that $6.5 in his last year if he will switch it to a team option for us. So if he falls off, or we've got a more economical option at that point for our backup catcher, which I think he will likely be at that point. We've at least gotten out. So we're going to offer him 3 and 18 as opposed to 3 and 20.5, and he's willing to think about that. So going to have some decisions to make this offseason, and the biggest one is obviously going to be at shortstop, where you can see Bichette still absolutely highlights the class. Even for the Yankees, though, a player looking for 4 years for their age 39 through 42 seasons at around $32-33 million a year, who is physically wrecked, just does not seem like a good idea to us right now. So we're probably going to go into free agency and see what we can kind of piece together from this motley crew of potential free agent shortstops that are out there. There's definitely not any great options. We may just, end up piecing it together with what we have on the team right now, which wouldn't be optimal because Gavin Killen is our backup middle infielder. Definitely a good defensive shortstop, but not much of a bat at all. And I think as I've looked at the landscape of starting pitchers, even though the Yankees are coming off of a World Series championship, our starting pitching ERA was as bad as it gets in the American League, which is not optimal. I'm still thinking about bringing Tyler Fullman back. He opted out of the contract. 3 very good pitches. Average in his basic pitching ratings, and when you look at him over the course of his career, 95 ERA plus, 100 FIP minus. He's almost by definition just an average major league starter, but considering making an offer to him, by the same token, he is going to be 34 years old next year, and he's looking for over 10 million. I think I might be I'm talking myself back into letting him hit free agency. I definitely want to add at least 1, if not 2 more pitchers. If we're able to, bring on Jeff McKinney for the $6 million range, that to me is a pretty similar profile, although he has not been quite as successful over the course of his career. But he's younger and he's durable. I think that's probably the way to go. Doesn't rule out bringing back Fullman if we're able to get Josh Brown locked up over the next couple of weeks before free agency. That'll put a little less pressure on us also. And good news, Jonas Smith has joined us as our scouting director. We're also looking for 1 minor league manager. So highly favors tools, outstanding with amateurs and international scouting, legendary with the minor leagues, and excellent in the major leagues. good to have a professional scout back on board with the team, which should help us as we get closer to free agency. Right now we are at 12% of our budget on major league scouting, 18 minor league, 28 amateur, and 42 international. Don't really think we're going to change that materially, but what I am going to do is take a look at the upcoming free agents, particularly the starting pitchers, and you can see it looks very different with Jonas Smith's look at things. And interesting, he thinks that Jeff McKinney's only going to be looking for about $4.4 million, but Willie Nieves and Josh Hammond definitely stand out. So we are going to request some scouting reports updated on all of these top potential starting pitchers as we get closer to free agency, just so we will know exactly what we are dealing with. Mike Falls, herniated disc. That's not the end of the world, hopefully. So we'll at least scout him out. Jaquan Webb, coming off of a torn flexor tendon in his elbow, out for another 6 months. Probably not going to go there with him looking for around $18 million a year. We'll also scout Angel Ayala. And hopefully we'll have Josh Brown soon, so no need to scout him right now. And some good news for the Yankees. We've got Romo extended, so now with Romo and Cocaruda have the same catchers back as last season. The thought is that Cocaruda is probably going to be playing more, but if Romo ends up a backup, he's an expensive backup, but he's also the best defensive catcher in baseball. Got Mejia signed, void arbitration. Got Josh Brown signed to that contract, $40 million a year, $40 million for the next 5 years, $8 million a year. So that gives us at least a third proven major league starter who's healthy at the beginning of the year to join Chapa and Neighbors. So we've got at least 3/5 of our starting rotation filled for the start of next season. Kevin Blunt, Eric Cares, Thomasine Kaku, and Danny Harder all agreed to avoid arbitration also, which is great. And then manager Logan Taylor agreed to a contract. So I believe at that point our personnel are all set. Not going to spend the money on an assistant GM since that is my job. And our staff cohesion is still excellent with a very productive coaching staff here for the New York Yankees. And we're going to try to shop Luis Ortiz. We mentioned we're not going to offer him anything in arbitration. He's got no minor league options left, and no one else is really all that interested in him too. He's done a good job for us in the past, but the preference is to have kind of those 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th pitchers in our system who could be in the majors or could end up in the minors, to at least have minor league options so they're not constantly going through waivers. So given that he's kind of a average pitcher, he doesn't really excel against lefties. Even though he is a lefty, he's fine against them. He's a little better, but it's not an overwhelming split. Going to be moving on from Mr. Ortiz. Getting into award season now, looking at the Gold Gloves, glad to have Drew Romo back, won another Gold Glove. You can see 36, 35, 34, 33. So every year he's been with us, he has won the Gold Glove, and he's also won 5 more in the National League in addition to the 4 he's won in the American League. So unclear whether he's going to be our backup or our starter next year, but obviously happy to have him back on board for a few more seasons. Reliever of the year, Alex Thurman of the Rangers, a unanimous selection, 39 saves and a 1.29 ERA, pretty solid. Thomasine Kaku, who we recently avoided arbitration with, finished 4th in the voting for the Yankees. Silver Sluggers, Dave Bravo, our first baseman, had a monster year hit .278 with 39 homers and 118 runs batted in. We've already talked about Bo Bichette, who won another Gold Glove at shortstop. And then our great young right fielder, Gabe Cologne, won his third consecutive Silver Slugger award. The first two were at DH. This one, he is now in right field winning. So we locked him up last offseason, bought out his arbitration years in addition to some other seasons. So his contract is going to be increasing up into the mid-20s of millions for the next several years. But very happy to have Cologne locked up on board. And Eric Markin, Rookie of the Year for the New York Yankees. Another one of the young players who has come up through our system. You can see just a really nice bat. Took him until he was 28 years old to get a lot of playing time at the major league level. But produced very well. .321 batting average, 16 homers, 80 runs batted in. So getting into the big awards now, don't think we are much of a contender for the Cy Young Award with anybody, but think that Kevin Daniels should be a very strong candidate for MVP this season. And the Yankees rookie manager, Pat Carroll, won Manager of the Year. Brought him up from the minors when we made a change at manager last season, and all he did was lead the Yankees to 108-54 record, a world championship, and win Manager of the Year. So a great start to Pat Carroll's career. As expected, no Yankees received any votes at all in the Cy Young Award voting. We will sim ahead and see if Kevin Daniels is able to get that AL MVP award. And he is not. Bo Love of the Chicago White Sox, a unanimous winner. Daniels was second, but Bo Love must have had a monster season. Really just a slightly average offensive profile, but he did have a great year. .340, 45 homers, 122 runs batted in, and an 8.6 WAR playing center field. Interesting. He's the one who cost, one of the ones who cost Daniels the Triple Crown, because you can see Daniels here batted .331, was tied with him for the league lead in homers, also led in runs batted in, led in runs scored, led in slugging, led in OPS, led in WRC plus, and an 8.6 WAR. And he also played center field. Let's look at the fielding stats. Daniels is not a great center fielder. .988 fielding percentage, 2.72 range, minus 3.8 zone rating, and .975 defensive efficiency. So definitely looks like Daniels was a below average center fielder, but I would say that Daniels' offensive season was better than Love's. Looking at the fielding stats, .993 fielding percentage, similar range, better zone, better defensive efficiency for Bo Love. So I kind of get it, but him being unanimous over Kevin Daniels definitely seems like a bit of a raw deal for Kevin Daniels to almost win the Triple Crown and not get a single vote for MVP. Although you can say Bo Love, almost won the Triple Crown also. 122 runs batted in, a .340 average, as opposed to Daniels with 136 runs batted in and a .331 average after they tied with 45 home runs. I don't know. I don't like it. Would be interested in hearing what others think down below, but definitely does not seem like a unanimous type MVP season for Bo Love over Kevin Daniels. Bo Bichette, Gabe Cologne, Dave Bravo, Wander Franco, and Eric Markin also received votes for the Yankees. So the monster offense got plenty of attention from the MVP voters, just not to actually win the award. So we have gotten through award season. We've re-signed Drew Romo at catcher. We've re-signed Josh Brown at starting pitcher. re-signed all of the arbitration eligible players that we want. So if and when we do get to the offseason, a starting shortstop and then a couple starting pitchers is kind of what we need to be looking at. Have plenty of firepower to do that with over 62 million, close to 63 million available for free agents. I'm sure ownership won't be happy if we're spending all of that money, but we'll do what we need to do. May also eventually look in the trade market to upgrade one of those positions, because we're just not that enthusiastic about paying Bo Bichette 125 to 130 million for another 4 years in his late 30s and early 40s. Doesn't seem like a prudent contract to me, even for the Yankees. Looking at the performance in the sim that we've done, as I mentioned at the start of the episode, 15 years as the Yankees general manager, 3 World Series championships, 13 consecutive playoff appearances, overall a .594 winning percentage. Kind of revamped the roster significantly those first couple years, getting rid of a lot of the Brian Cashman contracts and getting rid of a lot of the home run, strikeout, feast or famine, true outcome type players that he had built the roster around. And since then, it's been pretty successful. Haven't missed the playoffs since we kind of cleaned house on the Cashman era. Taking a look at how that Yankees team has looked since we took over. Obviously, getting rid of Gary Sanchez was one of the first moves we made. Kind of a revolving door at catcher for a few years before Sean Murphy came in. Then we had Alvarez for several years. Siegler, who is still on the roster now, although we're not going to sign him, has started for us and been a backup at times. And then most recently, Drew Romo, who we recently re-signed. First base has been a bit of a revolving door with some big names over the years, though. Pavin Smith, Freddie Freeman, Pete Alonso, Pavin Smith again, Ryan Mountcastle. And then, most recently, the development of Dave Bravo, who was brought up through our system and has been our starter for the last several years. Second base, also a bit of a revolving door over the years. LeMahieu in the early years, Nick Gonzalez, Alexander Vargas, Anthony Volpe, and then finally Jose Montoya stabilized the position for several years before we signed Wander Franco and moved on from Montoya. And then Mejias and Franco have played the position for the last couple years, alternating between second and third base. Ke'Bryan Hayes, Max Muncy, Xander Bogaerts, and Jake Cronenworth at times have been our third basemen, but feel like we're in a pretty stable position now with Victor Mejias. Shortstop, Gregorius and Fletcher in the early years, then a good long run with Bogart, and then a real long run with Bo Bichette that is likely coming to an end now. Looking at our right field situation, our left field situation, started with Stanton, Benintendi, Hunter Renfroe. Shiku Shu played there for several years before he moved to right field after Judge left. Then Brian Reynolds, Jared Kelenic, and now Shu back there. Cody Bellinger was our center fielder for a long time, one of the players that we really built that first World Championship team around. Brian Reynolds and Mike Grimes in recent years, and now feel pretty good that Kevin Daniels should be the main man out there for several years. And then right field, probably the most stable position that we've had. Aaron Judge for a long run, and then Shiku Shu for a long time before he moved into left to turn it over to Gabe Colon. And we have Colon signed for another 7 years. So right field, the most stable position of the New York Yankees during this playthrough. Looking at the pitching staff, obviously, a lot of familiar Yankees names: Luis Severino, Garrett Cole, Jared Montgomery, Jameson Tyone when we started on. Had Carlos Rodon for several seasons, a year of Noah Syndergaard. Had Sean Manaea for a few years, Aaron Nola, Jack Flaherty as we kind of built up the roster. And Nola, along with Eduardo Rodriguez and Julio Urias, were along with Flaherty on the team that won the World Series championship in 2026. Added Lance McCullers Jr. into the mix. Jeff Hackinson had some big years for us, and Christian Javier was an important player for us for several years. Moving forward, kind of moved on to the next rotation, which is the one that we have now with Leiter, although he's coming off of that injury. Trade for Bobby Chapa, the acquisition of Tyson Neighbors. Kindon Lavelle also played for us. Garrett Edwards had a few years with him also where we thought he was going to be a key player for us, but ended up moving on from him. Jonathan Lasaiga was our closer at the beginning. Then we had Josh Hader for a year, Devin Williams for a year, Daniel Salas for a year, and then since then, Tim Wallace has been our closer for an extended period of time now, and we've got him wrapped up with a contract for another few years. So has been an interesting run over these 15 seasons with the Yankees. Hope that you've enjoyed it. As I mentioned, with OOTP 22 out today, not sure if and when we're going to come back to this series, but feel that we are leaving the team in pretty good shape with the moves that we have made so far in the offseason if we do decide to come back to it. If not, we've proven our point. Anybody except Brian Cashman could do better with the Yankees and win more World Series championships than he has over the last couple of decades. So we are going to be announcing in relatively short order which rebuilding team we're going to be playing with in OOTP 23. If you've enjoyed this series, hope you spend some time watching that. And as I mentioned, we're on hiatus. We may come back to the Yankees at some point, but don't want to promise anything. So if this is the end of the rebuild of the New York Yankees, feel that we've done our job with 3 World Series championships, 2 of the last 3, and have enjoyed it a lot and enjoyed the interaction in the comments. If you've liked the videos, would really appreciate it if you continue to like them online at YouTube, subscribe to our channel, and comment down below. Thank you so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.